here and now. How do we want to live in our digitized world? And what is this doing to our senses and our perception of the world? And how can we create an empathic relationship between media, people, and the built environment? So those are questions I'm very passionate about. And that might have to do a little bit with the way I grew up. So looking at you in the audience, I would reckon that the great majority of you are digital natives already. So you grew up with computers, personal computers, with the internet, with smartphones. And I, in contrast, I'm a digital immigrant. So I grew up in a pretty analog way, in a pretty analog world. And my mom, she's an illustrator, like water paint. And my dad, he was a computer engineer way back when they, A, filled entire spaces, one single computer, and B, in Germany, it wasn't even called computers, it was called process calculation machines. Take that. So one of the consequences was that my dad would bring home these big stacks of punch cards for my sister and I as paper stocks. So punch cards for you guys, the digital natives, those were pieces of cardboard and they had punched holes out of it, and that was the digital code. And between my sister and I, we had a value system. So the fewer holes were on the card, the more valuable they were to us. So now let's go from back then to now. Because now it's 7 o'clock. What does that mean? It means that on average, all of us will have used our smartphones for about 3.5 hours today already. We will have picked this thing up 40 to 50 times just to check whatever. So a majority of our life is actually happening on these devices here. That's where we get our information, our entertainment, that's how we communicate. This is how we navigate. These things are running our lives. And now when you take them out again, and you compare that with the size of a fancy business card, you will find out it's pretty much the same size. So that means all our richness of our lives, our personal lives, has been collapsed to this little rectangle. So it looks like we're walking around with digital blinders right now. So I think, and I believe, that that doesn't just do any kind of justice to us as beings, human beings with a multi-sensorial intelligence. So when we just look at our field of vision, when we look at our smartphones, we engage 1/10 of our field of vision on everything that's there, what makes up our world right now. So that means 9/10 of our field of vision just goes unused. So once again, it looks like we're using digital blinders. And that's not really adequate, I believe, to the very sophisticated sensorial apparatus that we all carry around with us. And I don't need to tell you, we have a broad field of vision, stereophonic vision, stereoscopic, that's the word. We have a great sense of balance and navigation. We have the sense of hearing. And everything that we can't really hear because it's out of frequency, we can feel in our bodies. We have a great sense of touch on our skin. We have a sense of temperature and all of the stuff that comes along with that. And last not least, we have an acute and very primal sense of smell that can unlock our unconscious and conjure up very deep memories that we didn't even know we still had. So we're super multi-sensorial beings, and our digital devices are, I would say, very low fidelity right now. And it seems that it has become so embedded in our lives that we don't even question that anymore. And when we look at media in our environment, like the big screens around us, when we look at the urban environment, then this is what we usually encounter right now. It's a cacophony. It's information overload. It's a huge waste of energy. And I'm asking myself, isn't there a better way to embed the digital intelligence that we have drawn up into our environment in a more enjoyable, empathic way? Because the merging between the digital and the physical worlds, I believe, is not a question of if. It's just a question of when and how and where. So we better get used to it, and we better become active designers of this, hopefully empathic relationship. So now in my professional work, I'm wearing two hats. One hat is artist and designer, and the other hat is educator at Art Center College of Design in Pasadena in California. And in both these fields of work, I'm always questioning myself this one question: how can we create a more empathic relationship between media, people, and the built environment? And in my professional work as a designer, as an artist, I'm always working across different disciplines. So yes, I use media, but I also use space, I use storytelling, I use graphic design, and try to orchestrate all these different disciplines to create exhibitions, World's Fair pavilions, or digital media art pieces. As an educator, I really try to challenge my students to get beyond their comfort zones. And one of these opportunities to do that is actually a satellite studio for Art Center here in Berlin. And we do different projects there. It's not a classroom, actually. It is a pop-up creative agency for groups of students from different disciplines to come here to Berlin, explore the city, and be here for 90 days. That's the student visa duration, and do awesome stuff. And one year, I thought, okay, what is the meanest, the most challenging design challenge to a millennial? It's to go unplugged. Try to survive, not only survive, but also to thrive in a foreign culture, in an environment, urban environment as dense, as rich as Berlin actually is. And they did awesome stuff. They navigated the city, they investigated the city with all their senses. Yeah, they smelled it, they touched it. They were without any kind of mediating digital filters. And then they created design and art to represent the city. And we actually made a deal with them. After 45 days, we said, okay, digital Ramadan is over. You can use your devices now. You can go back to the internet and to your smartphones. And they said, no, now we're not interested in this anymore. We got this far. We want to do the other 45 days as well. I also work in media, public media art pieces. And the cool thing to me about that is when you do public media art, you can do a lot of experimentation, and you experiment in real time, in real places with real materials, but you don't have the commercial pressure than if you did that like as an agency, for a commercial client. You have more liberty. And that gives you the opportunity to actually, in the best of all worlds, to really test out ideas, to see like, okay, when I put this kind of media in the space, how will people react? And does it actually enrich the environment or not? And the one example that I brought for you here is called the eCloud, and it's a media art installation I did with two friends and colleagues at San Jose International Airport. That's the gateway to Silicon Valley. And as any modern airport, let's face it, the fascination of flying is gone. I mean, it's a total pain in the ass. Yeah, it's a hassle. And the childlike fascination of flying through the air is kind of gone. So what we try to do with the eCloud is actually to rekindle the fascination of flying. And to do that in an environment that is super dense with information, like an airport, where people are just trying to, not miss their planes. So we took live data sets from 100 destinations that you can fly to from there. And these live data sets are the weather data. So it's temperature, it's precipitation, it's wind speed, and all of these kind of things. And aggregate these data and turn them into visual poetry by creating animated behavior on this cloud consisting out of thousands of these little pixels here. And the second challenge that we had with this piece was when you do media art, you actually want to have a dark space because you're probably going to project something or you work with light or something like that. And here we had a glass ceiling and the Southern California sunlight was blasting through it. So you can't do much of that. So we had to find a dynamic material that actually can take the digital information and be happy when there's the sun outside shining brightly. And the material that we came up with is actually LCD glass, and that has the property of turning from clear to white opaque. And the more light you blast on it, the more happy this material seems to be. So this installation was done in 2010, and it's still running. So for a media art piece, that's also the idea of longevity is an important factor. So when we switch now a little bit gears again and say, well, okay, that's good and nice for media art, but can we take things that we learn here and actually turn it into architecture? And architecture, as you might know, the buildings, there's a lot of talk about smart buildings, so they become much, much more sophisticated now, how they regulate temperature, light, climate, and all of these good things. So we talk about smart buildings. However, they don't really appear much empathic and smart to the users. And I believe that even the most sustainably built building is a total waste of resources if no one feels well using it. And especially now in our post-corona times where we rethink our workplaces, the places that we build and that we create for people, they must be worth the commute. They must be worth going there. And I believe that when you can turn the intelligence of a building actually into the interface of the building, then you enter a whole new level. And to illustrate that point a little bit, here is a media art installation that we do for such a new building. It's called DataSun, and it's planned to be in the entrance lobby of that big building here. And what this is, it's actually a live data representation of the state of activity within the building. So it has these sensors anyway. It collects all these data about, who's flushing the toilet on 5th floor and how much energy is used, electricity, how much data traffic is there. And we take all these live data and turn it into the DataSun. And the DataSun is like a live EKG, and it's made out of very special LEDs that can replicate natural sunlight to 99% truth. And so this artificial sun will reflect in real time how this organism that consists of the building and everyone in there and all the activities in real time. So you come in there in the lobby and you immediately know how everyone's doing, including the building that afternoon. And as I mentioned before, this whole challenge of taking the digital into the physical space needs dynamic materials, especially if we want to get away from screens and we want to go beyond screens. And ironically, one of the materials that I gotten to play with actually comes from a screen, and that's the screen of a Kindle reader. So now you might be familiar with that. That is a very special screen because it does not emit any light. It just reflects light. It's just like ink on paper. So that's very gentle on the eye, and you can use it under very bright ambient properties. And it uses very, very little energy because it doesn't need any energy to light up, because it doesn't. So I was approached by the manufacturer of these screens, and they called up and said, well, you know, we produce millions and millions of these screens, and now we're able to actually print out this material a mile long. We just have no idea what to do with it. I said, well, maybe I have an idea, maybe let's think about that. And what came out of it is the first zero-energy media facade. And that's the San Diego airport again, this time on the outside, and is completely self-sufficient. It consists out of 2,000 stickers, smart stickers, all made out of this material. And each of these stickers collects its own sunlight through a little photovoltaic strip, has a little battery, and a little Wi-Fi receiver. And then there's a computer that gets fed by very organic designed animations, and it gets broadcast to the computer's 2,000 friends. He knows, she knows every one of these stickers by name and tells each of these stickers what to do next. And this creates this giant canvas for animations. And ironically, this is in front of the freeway. So there's tens of thousands of motorists seeing this artwork every day when they sit in a traffic jam, stationary, while the facade is doing these beautiful water ripples and snowflakes and all of that other fun stuff. The thing that I'm dreaming of is to get to a project where this media application is not an afterthought anymore, but where it becomes part of the architectural design right from the get-go, where it gets designed into a facade through the architecture. And this, I believe, is then the real step that is logical as a next step for creating buildings that are not only intelligent on the inside, but are able to communicate to the outside. And we come a little bit closer to this convergence of the digital and the physical, but in a very empathic way, without light pollution and without being completely commercially driven. So to sum this little musings up here, I think we have an amazing opportunity to renegotiate, redesign, reinvent an empathic relationship between people, media, and the built environment. And there are certain things we can avoid and we can question, and you should question. Can we have better interfaces than what we're using right now? Can we have things that enrich our senses instead of limiting them? Can we make sure, please, that all of this is not just controlled by 2 or 3 global companies and corporations? So I think it is up to us to really make sure that this convergence between the digital and the physical enriches our lives, because I truly believe that technology should comply to people and not the other way around. Thank you very much, and you can use your cell phones again.